Hey, thank you for coming to 1500ESPN.com. I'm Derek Wetmore, and this is Matthew Coller. I don't even know if you're wearing a 1500 ESPN shirt today. You are.
Yes,
I thought you were maybe
indeed,
just showing people your chest.
Well, it's not a bad plan.
No, it's a good play in my book. We're standing outside Winter Park Vikings practice here. That is the Viking ship. Nobody's actually sailed it. It's been parked here for as long as I can remember. We're going to talk today about Sam Bradford and Carson Wentz, but the matchup between the Vikings and Eagles comes down to so much more than that, so we'll dig into all that. And how good are the Eagles? How good is Carson Wentz? That's everything in this video. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel if you appreciate any of the Vikings Insight that we have here. 1500 ESPN Twin Cities on YouTube. It's very easy. I'm going to keep asking until people do it, but our numbers are growing, so that's fun. That's exciting. Matthew.
It's clear people give a ship. Go ahead.
You proud of that one?
I've been waiting for weeks to say that, but last week we weren't in front of the ship.
Rats. Well, now you got your chance. I have to ask you because several weeks ago you could fast forward on the Vikings schedule calendar and say, okay, who's the most difficult matchup coming up? And it was easily the Philadelphia Eagles. Coming out of the bye week, yes, but you're going on the road to face the Eagles. Now at 5-0, is that matchup still daunting for the Vikings, or given what we've seen the past couple weeks from the Eagles, are you maybe selling on the Eagles stock?
I wouldn't say that any matchup that the Vikings are going to have would be daunting for even the rest of this year. The Dallas Cowboys look like a really strong team, and I wouldn't completely underestimate the Arizona Cardinals, the potential for them to get it together and become a very good team again. A lot of people were picking them as potential Super Bowl favorites, and the Packers, too, are still the Packers, even if Aaron Rodgers is having some struggles.
Yeah,
but
we'll see.
With this Eagles team, yes, the shine is definitely off of this matchup because of the last two losses for the Eagles. It appeared with their schedule facing Detroit and then going against Washington that it was going to be, all right, Eagles are going to beat those two teams, and then this sets up for two undefeated NFC matchup and the game of the week for sure. And now it's a little more like, okay, how good are the Eagles really? But I would say they have the number one point differential in the NFC by 1 point over Philadelphia or over the Minnesota Vikings. So, and you look around at some of those statistical websites, Football Outsiders, Pro Football Focus, and they're still giving a lot of credit to Philadelphia despite their last two losses.
Now, is there any concern? Because something stuck out to me when you said there's not going to be a daunting matchup, and it strikes me, and Vikings fans are already aware of this, or maybe this has been their perception for a while, the Vikings are the daunting matchup for other teams. In most weeks, most matchups. There are going to be some good games like you mentioned. There are going to be other games where teams are looking at that like, man, I don't know what we do this week. We just got to figure out how to win games around that game. Given what we know about Carson Wentz and about the Philadelphia Eagles, what has those advanced statistical websites like Football Outsiders, Pro Football Focus, why do they like the Eagles so much? What have they done that's impressed those guys?
Yeah, I think part of it, and they might be without some players on the defensive side too, so we'll see how that means. But part of it is their defense, which has been very good. Now, the thing is that two of those first three wins, they played against the Browns and the Bears. That helps, and strength of schedule has not been very tough for Philadelphia. The other win was against Pittsburgh, and at least we think healthy Ben Roethlisberger at the time. That was a complete blowout. That's a really impressive win.
Sure.
The last two losses that they've had, I mean, one is on the road against Washington, who's been pretty strong this year, made the playoffs last year, and they didn't lose by much in either game. Detroit is also having a pretty decent year so far. The statistical websites, because of the point differential, because of how few points that they've allowed on defense, and the way Carson Wentz has played, even if it wasn't as good the last 2 weeks, have been good enough to justify them, I think, as a top team, but not quite as good as the Vikings.
Sam Bradford is a better quarterback than Carson Wentz. I don't think you get a lot of people fighting you on that, at least how they're playing right now. I'll give the Vikings the edge in that matchup. Is that enough to propel the Vikings over the Eagles? Mike Zimmer said today in his press conference with the media that this is not about Sam Bradford versus Carson Wentz. This is about the Minnesota Vikings versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And I get that, and it's coach speak, but does the advantage quarterback, and given that their two defenses playing pretty well, do the Vikings still have a decided edge in this based on that factor?
They do, yes, and especially because of what Washington put on tape last week against Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
The thing that Washington did that impressed me the most was they confused Wentz. and they rushed him and got after him. That was something that the first three opponents did not really do at all, which was get in Carson Wentz's face. Ryan Kerrigan of Washington just crushed their right tackle all day long. They're missing Lane Johnson, and, I mean, we all know how good Jason Peters is, but this is a team, Philadelphia, that gave a ton of money to Lane Johnson for a reason, and now he's out for the next 9 games because he's got that PED suspension. That means whoever is lining up over him, whether it is Danielle Hunter or Brian Robinson, they've got a chance to have lunch on Sunday. I mean, because they were a disaster at blocking for him on that right side. And then there was the confusion of bringing linebackers up to the line of scrimmage to stop the run, for one. That's another big part of it. But another part is Wentz doesn't know who's dropping back.
He hasn't seen these enough yet.
Right, and that's been tough for veteran quarterbacks to take advantage of. Cam Newton, Aaron Rodgers, Eli Manning. I think it's going to be even tougher for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, no question. Let me play devil's advocate for a quick second and point out one glaring concern that the Vikings sort of addressed. Offensive line. Right now they're starting with 2 tackles. As we speak today, this is before we walk over to Wednesday's practice. As they stand today, it's Jeremiah Searles and T.J. Clemmings as the 2 tackles for the Vikings. They did sign Jake Long, so that's why I say they sort of addressed it. Mike Zimmer said it's possible he'll start. He's not willing to tip his hand there. But, man, the way the Vikings offensive line has played has got to be their biggest weakness. And certainly if you're Philadelphia, the thing that you're licking your chops getting to go up against. They could maybe get to Bradford, a dozen times easily and put him on the ground all afternoon. That'd be one thing I'm concerned about if I'm the Vikings.
What I'm looking for even more is how the Vikings block for their own run game. Because Philadelphia has been one of the worst teams in the league in terms of allowed yards per attempt on the ground. And we've been waiting for the Vikings to get it together with their running game. Last week against Houston, or 2 weeks ago, they did not really do that. There were just enough running here or there. They showed some signs against the Giants in that win, 85 yards for Jerick McKinnon. This could be the week where they break out if they get decent performances up front. T.J. Clemmings was annihilated by Jadeveon Clowney. You cannot overstate how much of a mismatch that was in the running game, and we saw it too in the passing game. With Bradford, he hasn't been sacked that much, and he has been dinged up a little bit, just taking a couple of hits, including one in the Houston game. But his ability to get it out fast, I think, has mitigated a lot of the effects of a really bad offensive line, and they could probably continue to do that. It's can they use the running game against Philadelphia, which I think they probably could find some success there if they get blocks.
Are we expecting, this is a quick one and we'll wrap it up, 6-0? I mean, is that a very realistic possibility? Every great team is going to have stumbling blocks, spots that you're like, whoa, they shouldn't have been that close in that game or whatever. I mean, are we just kind of expecting the Vikings to handle business out of their bye week this week?
I mean, we've seen Mike Zimmer just on a week-to-week basis and what he's been able to do against great quarterbacks.
Give him extra time.
He's got extra time to prepare, and a team that just put a lot on tape showing where Carson Wentz, some of his blind spots are. I think the Vikings do win this game. But at the same time, you're going on the road. And anytime you're going on the road, I mean, we saw it from Philadelphia last week. I think that's a lot tougher in the NFL. The Vikings are favored, probably should be. But, I mean, this one I could see being close. I think it all comes down to whether Carson Wentz can adjust from what he saw last week against Washington and do it against players with much better talent.
More talent and Zimmer dialing up blitzes that Carson Wentz has never even dreamed of, even in his nightmares.
Now, that's the thing that most impressed me about Mike Zimmer, is that he knows what the other team has seen on tape. He's watched the same thing, so he knows what they're going to be adjusting to, and then he makes a change off of that. That has always kind of blown my mind, that when you see what the Vikings defense will do 1 week, and then you'll think, oh, I know what they're going to adjust to that. And then he does too. And he prepares for that. And it's pretty impressive. And I think he'll do that again here, and the Vikings will win.
The chess master. I believe as we called him on the radio when you filled in for Mackie and Judd this week, that he was the football coaching machine or football coaching robot or something like that. That wouldn't surprise me in the least if that comes out after he retires as a head coach, and then it turns out, oh, actually it was a cyborg.
He was a computer designed only for defenses, right? Yeah, exactly. I know. And Mike Zimmer said that he spent his off week just watching the next 5 opponents. We're like, of course, Mike, take a day.
No.
Take a day, man.
Nope, cooking up new blitzes. We'll be cooking up new blitzes Sunday after the game. No? You didn't like that one?
No.
How come you get to make puns
We'll
and I
be
don't?
writing articles in a professional manner
That's
and
not
posting
fun.
them on the interwebs for your enjoyment.
1500ESPN.com is where you can find all of those. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, 1500 ESPN Twin Cities. We'll be doing another Vikes Insight video that day. Also, check out the Purple Podcast on iTunes and Podcast One. Until Sunday, I'm Derek Wetmore for Matthew Coller, saying see you later.